Hi, I'm Lynn. I am a first-year environmental science major, also looking into double majoring in entomology. I'm actually from around Atlanta, Georgia. I identify as a mixed race, biracial Asian. I'm half white, half Vietnamese. On my Vietnamese side, my mom actually comes from a group of Vietnam War refugees called the Vietnamese boat people. In the 1970s, they escaped from the Vietnam War via boat, hence the name. She came here around 1975 when she was 3. I think that with being Asian, there is a lot of pressure to put your work or your job or your grades before your own mental health. Sometimes it feels as though you have to choose in between your grades or your own health. There's definitely a lot more pressure on Asian Americans just because of the stereotypes that we face with being Asian. You have to have a 4.0. You have to be really good in STEM. That can feel really overwhelming sometimes. For me personally, I want to keep up with those expectations. That's how people perceive me, that's how people view me. I think there's a lot of pressure with having to choose between family and what they expect and think of you and your own health. I have the resources to get really good mental health treatment if I need it. The people within my community, within my family and my friend group, they've always been able to listen if I have any issues. I also feel like when it comes to seeking help, you kind of need to put yourself out there sometimes. You need to advocate for yourself, especially if you live in a place or in a community where mental health isn't taken seriously. It really is up to you to initiate and to take the first step. It's kind of normal within my friend group, within my family, to talk about how we feel and to communicate with each other. That hasn't really been an issue with me. But I've noticed with my other Asian friends that it's not the same for them. They have a hard time talking with mostly elders because they haven't really been exposed to that. Change should start at a really small scale if you want to see a difference. If you want to see mental health be destigmatized in Asian American communities, it should start with your own circle of friends or family, just by talking to them, asking them, how was your day? How was your week? How is your job going? Opening up the conversation can really allow people to talk about their emotions. But sometimes, especially with older Asians or Asians who are immigrants, they might just not understand. Sometimes you can't force someone to understand your view or how it is now with mental health. There is a little bit of responsibility with having to break the cycle yourself so that future generations will not have to deal with the same struggles that we do now. With a lot of immigrants or refugee parents or family, they just don't know what mental health really is. It's not that they don't really care, but they just have no idea how severe it can be sometimes. They don't know that it can be just as bad as physical health ailments. They might think that being depressed is just being a little sad and they'd be like, oh, just get over it. Or being anxious is just being a little nervous or a little stressed when it's really more than that. I also feel like if mental illness, mental health problems run in the family, sometimes it's just so normalized generation after generation, they don't really see a problem with it when those symptoms are a sign of a bigger problem. It wasn't up until my 17th birthday that I really started appreciating being Asian and being who I am and embracing my identity. For the longest time, I grew up in the South, which doesn't have in an area that doesn't have a whole lot of diversity, that didn't really have an Asian community. It was hard for me to find people who looked like me, who shared the same culture, who shared the same language as my family. I think that made it really hard to accept who I was. Fortunately, I've been seeing a lot more mixed race Asians in the media. I guess the fact that there's definitely more mixed race representation than there was a couple of years ago has definitely made me start to embrace my identity as a mixed race Asian. And I think it's really cool seeing people who are like you in the media, because everyone wants that. I feel like everyone needs that, especially when you're growing up and you're a kid and you don't see anybody who looks like you. It really takes a toll on you. If you're an Asian American struggling with mental health, the first step for me would be finding a community of people who are just like you. And fortunately, because we have the internet now, you can find a lot of those online.